My name is Mohamed. I've been with the Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition since I had to attend a meeting during a social work assignment in 2007, and I've been attending meetings ever since. And about a year after that, I became the Yukon Director for Canada Without Poverty in 2008. And I've been a co-chair, along with two others, Bill Thomas and Ross Manglater, since June of this year. So they've been making me talk a lot. So I'm getting used to it still though, so bear with me. That's why I have notes, which I'm waiting for. There's a picture here. You'll see a bunch of people there holding hands. That was an event that we did during Poverty and Homelessness Action Week, and we challenged people to come down to the bridge, which it's between a suburb and downtown Whitehorse, and join hands to bridge the gap between poverty and homelessness and human rights. And we had about 100 people come, and we actually filled the whole bridge, and that was the cover of one of the newspapers in town. So just to give you a bit of a background, as I'm still waiting for this to open, Yukon has 34,000 people in it, and Whitehorse has approximately 26,000. The communities outside of Whitehorse are 85% First Nations. The Yukon as a whole, 25% First Nations, but we're seeing at some of the, like the food bank and other areas concentrated in Whitehorse, most of the client base is First Nations. Maybe go to the next slide. An overview of the presentation. I'm going to be talking about Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition initiatives and projects. We've been doing a lot in the community, and we work very closely with a lot of the nonprofit agencies and government. And I'll be talking about the social inclusion poverty reduction strategy a little bit, but I didn't want to get a bit negative there, so I just want to just brush over it a bit and explain what the challenges are around the strategy, and also successes and challenges with the work that the Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition is doing. Next slide. So Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition is, we have one staff, a coordinator. She's part-time. She works about 25 hours a week, sometimes more, because the need is quite high. We have a member base of about 200 people, but that doesn't mean that at our monthly meetings there's 200 people attending. The way that we keep in touch with our members is sending out email updates, and we find that just that the social media aspect of connecting with such a diverse member base has been really effective. So we'll send out email requests saying, we need people to put up posters, can anybody do that? And we'll get five responses saying, yeah, I can do that. And you know, people that have attended one meeting and they put their name down on the email list, we won't hear from them for months and months, and then there'll be a request to do maybe a soup kitchen at the liquor store, and that's the one and only thing they do, but it's something that they do every year. And also, sorry, I meant to say that the Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition has 3 co-chairs as well, and we take turns chairing meetings. And there was more I wanted to say there, but I can't remember. My computer sucks. It's a work computer. All right, next slide. So Whitehorse Connects is an event that we do. We used to do it once a year, and it started off very small, and so now it's increased. There is such a huge community acceptance of this, and the whole community came together. It's completely volunteer driven. So we have massage therapists and hairdressers and you know, estheticians, you name it. They're coming to in this one-stop shop of free services for low-income people in Whitehorse. And now we're doing Whitehorse Connects 3 times a year. We do hire a coordinator for it, but we get funding from Community Development Fund or from United Way. We've had to through to several avenues of funding to get money for it, but it's definitely something that it's filling a gap in the community for sure. Okay, where are we? Poverty and Homelessness Action Week. Next slide. So this year we celebrated the 7th Poverty and Homelessness Action Week. We focus on a different theme every year. So this year our focus was on human rights, poverty, and homelessness. And we used the phrase, mind the gap, because one of our keynote speakers was Armin, I can't say her last name, Yalexian, she's the senior economist for the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. And so our phrase was mind the gap, human rights, poverty, and homelessness. And so the purpose of FA is to bring the community together through organizing events. We have a coordinator for that as well, because it's just a huge job. And we engage the private sector, the media, educational institutions, not-for-profit sector, and the government. And some examples of how we engage the whole community. This year we released a snapshot on poverty in the Yukon. I have it here if anybody would like a copy. I don't know if I have enough. But this is, we compiled various statistics from Food Bank, the Salvation Army, which is the only shelter in town, homelessness, and the outreach van and housing. And so this year we did it in a couple weeks, so we had a time frame. But next year we would like to have a more extensive report, and not call it a report card, but just track progress around poverty and homelessness year to year and release it every year during FA, just so that the community can say, hey, we're doing well, or we've got major work to do. So, and as I said, Armin came and spoke. She spoke to the community. She also met with government officials, and she challenged at her speaking event. She challenged the Yukon to show the rest of Canada how to fill the gap between the rich and the poor. Because the North actually, it wasn't just the Yukon, but she said in the North we have a unique opportunity to show the rest of Canada how to deal with the mining companies that are coming in, and the exploration that's going on, because right now we're in the midst of an economic boom, and we have the opportunity to tell these companies what we want. So she was more articulate than I am. So CBC Radio's involvement was huge during FA. The Mind the Gap campaign, as I mentioned. And just on Main Street, the whole community came together, and there are businesses that allowed us to put guerrilla photography photos, which were snapshots of people, and then a little quote that they said around human rights and what they thought human rights meant to them. Beautiful photographs, and they were turned into calendars, which are going to be used as fundraiser. Tiny House Project. I'm not sure if people have heard about what tiny houses are, but it's a solution to deal with affordable housing. And one of the nonprofits in town, Blood Ties for Directions, they deal with HIV/AIDS, harm reduction, and they also have a housing navigator that tries to house the hardest to house people. And so they developed this proposal around, they even had a location, they had all the building materials donated, they had all the contractors were willing to donate their time, and the city bylaw stated that the house had to be connected to the city plumbing system, sewer system, so that proposal was kind of thrown out the window. So what they did, though, was they had an open house, tiny house open house, to inform the public about what this initiative is, and maybe there's some other solutions that could be made, but it is, in the midst of a housing crisis, any options need to be considered, especially, smaller, not huge 5-bedroom houses that cost $700,000. Next slide. So this is just a graphic of one of the things that was handed out. It's a bookmark that we had the students, I didn't mention the students take to the streets, but we had student journalists CBC radio reporter would, he gave them a journalism 101 course, and then they went on the streets of Whitehorse, handed these out, and they also had digital recorders, and they asked people what human rights meant to them, so that we had the social justice clubs involved with that. Next slide. A Home for Everyone. This is moving on from FOP. It's a report that Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition released in February of this year. And it's a housing action plan for Whitehorse. I have 2 copies here. Unfortunately, we don't have more because we've given them to pretty much everyone that would take a copy. And so the plan was developed through workshops, research, and input from community members, and it focuses on information and ideas that provide more and better housing options for all Whitehorse residents. And it's not just pointing fingers at government saying, hey man, you guys need to give us more money. It's the belief that housing is a human right, and as a community, people need to come together to solve the crisis. And we have enough information now with all these reports to move forward, so now it's time to act on it. And this action plan provides gaps, barriers, recommendations, costs it out, and also breaks down the partners that need to be involved. So highlights of the action plan also involve just breaking it down to the provision of emergency shelter, transitional housing, housing with long-term support, rental accommodation, and affordable home ownership. So we have presented this to all levels of government. The City of Whitehorse has been quite positive, and they've taken several steps towards addressing the housing crisis. Like they are offering a new initiative to homeowners to build rental units. It's a tax cut. And also they're looking into fast-tracking the development of new housing stock. And also the City of Whitehorse has been quite engaged when they've developed their new downtown city plan. And if you want a copy of A Home for Everyone, it's on the Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition website. So other reports that have been done that have been done that we've been involved with, and all community members have been involved with around poverty, are the Whitehorse Housing Adequacy Study, and this was involved. Many organizations were involved in making this project a success. It was a survey that was sent to about 670 people. Then there was a task force on acutely intoxicated people at risk. I'll just go through them quickly because I know my time's almost up. And if you want more information, I can give you more information. I have copies of them. Dimensions of social inclusion and exclusion in Yukon. This is a report that was done to inform the social inclusion poverty reduction strategy. And the Bridges and Barriers report, which has not yet been released. And then there was another report that I didn't put on here because it's not going to be released, but it's the cost of poverty report in the Yukon. And I know BC has just done this through the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, but the Yukon government did a cost of poverty report. And the reason why they're not releasing it is because it's not accurate, it's biased, because if the government releases a report on the cost of poverty, it's just going to make them look bad, probably, and not be conducive to, you know, continuing the stuff that they do. Anyway, so we are pushing for them to release it through a third party, like maybe a research institute or somewhere else. Somebody else has got to do it because it's got to be done. The social inclusion and poverty reduction strategy next. So the Department of Health and Social Services established the Office of the Social Inclusion back in 2007, maybe a little later than that, in order to guide the development and implementation and ongoing management of the Yukon government social inclusion poverty reduction strategy. So they work in partnership with other Yukon government departments, the private sector, and NGO community. And the office serves as the government's central resource and lead on issues related to social inclusion and poverty reduction. They also have a website that has updates on it, but nothing much has happened over the past 9 months. There's 7 who's involved, the staff in the Office of the Social Inclusion, and the Intergovernmental Steering Committee, which involves 7 Yukon government departments, and they're on this committee. And then the Community Advisory Committee is comprised of non-governmental organizations across Whitehorse. There's probably about 20 members on there. What's lacking, though, is First Nations involvement. There's been an ongoing lack of involvement since the beginning, and there hasn't been enough effort to engage all 14 First Nation communities, but I mean, it's hard to engage that many different communities, and they're all so far apart from each other, and everything's so Whitehorse-based. Setbacks in the strategy. Well, number one, okay, my issue is the strategy was not mentioned in the Yukon Party's platform. They were just recently re-elected. And then the issue with delays. So in February we had a workshop between the working group and the Community Advisory Committee. And the feeling after leaving the workshop was, wow, things are going to get done. They had said that the strategy was going to come out in the spring or this, and then later on they said the summer. And so everybody was really motivated and thought that something was going to happen. But then, several things happened. So the executive director of the strategy was let go, and then nothing really happened, and then the premier resigned, so a new one was appointed, and then there was no engagement with the Community Advisory Committee for several months, and then the summer happened, and then there was an election, and now here we are with a new cabinet and a strategy that's kind of up in the air, and we're not really sure where the government stands right now in terms of commitment on it. So the Community Advisory Committee is meeting with the minister in December to figure out what kind of a commitment they have. So what's really needed to make this strategy or any anti-poverty strategy a success is strong direction and leadership from the government. And the Community Advisory Committee is quite strong, but the strategy itself is only concerned with Yukon government programs and how they relate to social inclusion and poverty reduction. So it does have some flaws to it, but we're hoping that we'll move forward on this in some way, shape, or form. So successes with Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition. We worked very hard to create a high profile of serious issues in the community, such as housing, mental health, and food security, and we worked really hard to reduce stigma. And the media, in particular CBC Radio and Yukon News, have been really supportive in getting issues to the forefront. They provide services for free. They do stories all the time. And we're quite a respected organization in the community. And a huge success has been Whitehorse Connects. It started off, as I said, as a one-time-a-year event, and now it's just a huge thing that hundreds of people attend 3 times a year. So it shows that, you know, it's bringing the community together, and it's really bridging a gap. There's partnerships formed and relationships strengthened with government departments and the NGO community. So a big success we've noted this year is a partnership with Mental Health Services, which did not exist before. They worked over there, and everybody else was over here, and they had, you know, provide perfect services. But now they're noticing that they need to form partnerships because there's huge gaps in mental health and addiction services. There's Sally and Sisters. It's a partnership with the Food Bank and Salvation Army in delivering a soup kitchen for moms and their kids. It was in response to the safety concern that some women felt when going to the regular daily Salvation Army soup kitchen, which was, you know, it can be a little bit intimidating sometimes for some women that just are in abusive situations. And yeah, so and the structure of Yukon Anti-Poverty Coalition is such that it's easy to engage people in the community on a very broad level and tap into very different areas successful. There's such a broad member base: politicians, non-government, government, frontline workers, business people, concerned community members, and low-income people. So we're always surprised by the generosity of members in terms of both time and money. And we're always surprised with how many members we have. And every meeting's different. There's always different people there. And then the Home for Everyone Action Plan was also a big success. Challenges that we face. All of the services that we provide are Whitehorse-based. Sorry, this is the last slide, I think. Yeah, so everything's centered in Whitehorse. The communities are always being left out, and it's just funding capacity, and there's lack of leadership and direction from the government. That's what we're looking for right now. So, and the uncertainty around the new government's priorities and continued progression on all work that still needs to be done. So we started out as a really small coalition, and we're much different now than when we started. So we aim to consistently be credible, research-based, and find ways to address the major, large issues in the community. Anyway, there's the contact information, and thanks for listening to me.